No, fantastic. We are so excited to have you here to start off the amazing kickoff for the CyberSpeak Labs Con with the amazing mission to help next gen cyber. So, Pat, anything you've been doing fun this week before I kind of pass it off to you to get this amazing morning started?
Awesome. Yeah. So this week, obviously, just work and watching the World Cup. So if there's any soccer fans or football fans, wherever you are in the world, I'm super stoked to see the final Argentina and Spain on Sunday or tomorrow. So I don't want to go. I'll tell you guys at the end who I'm going for, so I don't get any haters leaving. So just kidding. But yeah, that's what I'm really, really stoked about this weekend, and just stoked about here. And thank you so much, Rihanna and the team, for having me. And hopefully this goes well, and there's some good insight from the talk and everyone else's talk as well.
No, fantastic. Now, I'm learning Restream as I do this, so I'm going to move it over to the next slide. I'm going to take myself into the back room, and I'm going to pass it all over to you.
Sweet. Awesome. Yeah, so that's so pretty much what I want to go over today is the security gaps killing SMBs, right? This is a talk I gave at a few different conferences, but I thought I can bring it here because I think it's really, really relevant for those folks that have SMBs, which is small, medium-sized businesses. And what we're going to be talking about is what penetration testers like myself and other testers find every day on different engagements. So again, my name is Patrick Gorman. I am the founder and CEO of ISP Security. And I don't know if we can go to the next slide. Sweet. Here we go. I don't know if you can move my picture or my thing over to the right a little bit. I don't know if that's possible because I'm like right in the center. But
yeah, let me see if I can get this.
Just so it doesn't.
How's that? Will that work?
That's even better. Cheers.
Okay, perfect. Cool.
So yeah. Who am I? Again, my name is Patrick Gorman. I am founder and CEO of ISP Security, where we provide penetration testing services, VC service, and security engineering services. And yeah, I do content and I love giving back to the community. My name on the internet is InfoSec Pat. I have a YouTube channel. I have a little podcast that I run, which is, on Thursdays when I'm not traveling or doing exciting stuff for the community and the world. And some fun facts. I really enjoy arm wrestling, and I'm a hockey player. So, and some certifications are down there, but we don't have to go that. We can go to the next slide. Sweet. So what is the SMB threat landscape like? Like when I came into the SMB space, like from my background, I worked for companies like KPMG, Meta. Yes, I do not put that information out there, but now a few folks may know. I keep a lot of my stuff private until I went on my own, to be honest. But SMBs, I believe, are the number one target for attackers. The reason being, in my opinion, is because they have valuable data, just like it says here, right? Customer PII, there's healthcare records, right? Like my main focus is the healthcare and financial systems. Those are the kind of clients that I work with. And what do they have? They have intellectual property as well that, an attacker can value from, because maybe they don't have the security defenses like a bigger organization, right? So they have transition to like weak defenses, like they're limited to security staff. I test every single company I test does not have a security staff. They maybe have an IT guy, or they have an MSP that services their company, which is a managed service provider. But they say they do cybersecurity. I'm not going to bash any MSP, but all they do is maybe install an RMM tool that has WebRoot or SentinelOne or something like that. And they install a sonic wall at the edge, and they say they have a cybersecurity stack, which is not always the case, because we'll get into more of more case studies later of how I attack these companies. They have budget constraints and then legacy infrastructure. And I'll tell you a funny story if I have time at the end. So the high ROI for attackers right? Because like I'm saying, there's not a lot of defenses in place for the company to defend against these kinds of attacks. And maybe they're not educated, right? So education, I believe, is probably the number one fault on a lot of companies' hacks, like social engineering, phishing, and all that good stuff, because, the human element is always to be nice, right? And the human element tends to be the weakest link in any kind of cyber attack. If you see all the ransom and stuff like that, you have to click on something, interact with a C2 or something to get that exploit to run. So, yeah, supply chain exposures and SMBs, awesome. Often hold credentials into larger enterprise environments. What does that mean? So say, for example, you might be a smaller organization, but maybe you have some stuff in AWS, GCP, or Azure, right? And then if we find like an S3 bucket and, a GitHub repository or something like an Azure DevOps, there's some stuff that we can leverage there if there's an outsourced developer or something. But yeah, so we can go on to the next one. So let me get a sip of tea. I didn't realize it's really early. I don't know. All right. So what attackers are actually after, right? So I'm coming to this talk on behalf of a good guy, right? We do penetration testing. We help organizations to stay secure against attackers, right? But at the end of the day, if you think about it, each pen tester can put on a malicious hat as well, which is good and bad, right? It's good because we think like that bad guy, so we can try to put defenses or try to put remediations in place for those kind of companies to tackle and make sure they're secure. And then obviously, if you're an a-hole, you leverage, use that for the bad. So financial data, right? These attackers are always after financial data. I think that's the number one. And number two, if you're a dark web browser or you browse on the dark web, you can find a lot of healthcare records. So that's why these are the top two industries that I normally work with, because I have a soft spot for them. So financial data, they have bank credentials. Obviously, hopefully you have MFA, but we'll get into MFA and all that stuff later. Credit card informations, payment records, and then wire transfer access. So say, for an example, you buy a house. I don't know if anyone has ever heard of the wire transfer frauds. So people somehow, some way, when you buy a house, the title company sends you documentation. Somehow these attackers start understanding and noticing, and it's very easy to, right? I don't want to get into how and all that stuff, but it's, if you're buying a house, if you find a house that's, say, for example, pending or in contingent or something like that on Zillow or whatever, now you can see who, you can start connecting the dots. If you're a hacker, you could start chaining the attacks. So say, for example, I find Sally Mae as the realtor, and Sally Mae is working at, whatever brokerage company. And then I can start like doing some reconnaissance and getting their email, and then you can see where it's going. So it's a really, really interesting, fascinating, and easy attack to pull off. And I've done it in an ethical way, testing companies with this, real estate companies and title companies. So I'm pretty familiar with that process. So the next one here is healthcare records. So healthcare records, we have PHI, we have patient files. Maybe you ever heard of Epic. You ever heard of these kind of EMR applications that they house data for their patients. If that gets breached, it's no bueno. It's going to be a crappy day for that company. And then insurance data. And pretty much I've seen, on the dark web, when I actually did this talk, I was seeing records going for like $250, right? On the dark web. So this is true. If you know where to look, you know where to look, if you know what I mean. Credentials and access, right? Domain admin, VPN accounts, like I said, cloud consoles access, privileged service accounts. Maybe someone's over-privileging an account. And I always use me as an example, because before my days in this world, I was a system administrator, system engineer. a long time ago, over 12 years ago now. And I always say this because it's the God honest truth. When, for an example, we'll use Sally Mae as an example, she calls in or puts in a ticket and she can't access her, her share on her home directory or whatever on a server, whack server name, whack share name. I'm going to go ahead and do something called NTFS permissions and share permissions. When you go to the folder, you right click, go to properties. And what I used to do, so I don't have to hear from Sally Mae, I used to put everyone. I found out this quote unquote trick. If I put everyone in that group, I don't have to hear from her again. She's able to access it, thumbs up, right? And to be honest, it still happens today. So if you start going and navigating share files and share folders with different tools, in your engagements, you'll see some open shares, which still happens today. And with that open share, you can access credentials because a lot of people put credentials inside of a document and thinking they're the only ones that can see it. But when they get that engagement or a pen test or internal pen test, those files are accessible. Okay. So the next one here is intellectual property, contracts, pricing, client lists. So all this stuff, right? Trade secrets and all this good stuff. So this is another, things that attackers are after. And then supply chain access and then ransomware payouts. At the end of the day, either you're doing it for a ransomware payout or then, you're doing it just for clout or you're doing it for props or bragging rights, right? But for the most part, people want to get a payout. If an attacker is going to attack a company. So how are they going to accomplish that? They encrypt your backups, plus your active data, and then they leverage, for 4 to 6 figures, sometimes 7 figures, right? Sometimes in the millions. It all depends. But remember, this is more of like SMBs. So if you get someone saying, okay, it's a $10,000 or $20,000 payout for 10 little small companies, that's $100,000. It's easier for someone to pay 10 grand versus $100,000. So you understand why they actually target these SMBs. And I had to put myself in those shoes. Okay, like why wouldn't you go for the big honcho? Because the big fish in the sea is harder to, you're not going to be able to fish a whale. You're going to be able to get the little guppies out of the sea, right? So that's the same kind of concept here. You can go ahead and go to the next one, please. So what do we actually find on every engagement? When I say every engagement, I mean it, right? I wouldn't say if I didn't find this on every engagement, I would have said, oh, quite a few engagement or whatever, every other engagement. But every single engagement that I have done, there's always something that's accessible. So not 0 days, like I said here, not nation state exploits, just basic security flaws. Weak passwords. And this was a recent one. I actually didn't put the password in here, but it's changed now. And I just did some reconnaissance and found their password on some, tools that I use for CTI, cyber threat intel. And I found that there's reusable passwords. And remember, we're human. We like simplicity. So if I have, I love my dog for my password, I'm probably going to use I love my dog everywhere, right? So weak passwords, password 2026, bang. Summer 2025, bang. These are still passwords that I've seen in the last 3 months, right? And these are not just CTFs or just, coursework and making these phony baloney passwords up. These are in the real world. Shared admin credentials. So say, for example, you get local admin or you find a local admin, you dumped it through whatever, Mimikatz or whatever, hash dump, and now you can reutilize that. And this is normally the same kind of password as a DA. And remember, SMBs, we don't have a PAM, we don't have anything, installed on or enabled on these in these environments. Default vendor passwords, credentials, etc. And, say, for example, they have a brand new HP switch because they're a small business. They're not going to go for Cisco and all these crazy expensive ones, or, maybe a layer 3, Ubiquity switch, which is like Ubiquity for username password. Because I do a lot of pen tests, and Ubiquity is on a lot of these engagements. They're using Unify for their firewalls. So no MFA, right? Critical systems, VPN, cloud, email, admin portals, just protected by an email, by a password, right? So this is, I see this all the time, and everyone's like, oh, but you need MFA by default for Office 365 and Microsoft. Yeah, but this is that. This is what I'm talking about for local internal networks once I drop my NUC inside your network or on an external test. Misconfigured AD. If you have an Active Directory, 99% of the time, it's really hard. If someone has a way to fully secure AD, put your hand up, talk to me after this conference, and I want to hear it, because I never seen a fully patched AD or fully configured AD that's unhackable. So co-browsable accounts, service accounts, etc. Excessive permissions, privileges, delegation, misconfigurations, and just flat AD. When I mean flat AD, sorry, my phone is going bananas. It's asking me who I want to call. I don't want to call anyone. So when I say flat AD, so say for an example, if it's a 25 or 50 or 100 person network, usually you're going to use something called a 24-bit subnet mask, which is 254 hosts. And now, why am I going to go to start subnetting that out and making things more complicated when I know I don't have more than 254 hosts? So they just say one flat network, the printers, the scanners. So what is normally you have a printer or a scanner or something like that tying into your LDAP configuration, right? And you can start doing something called passback attacks. There's so many cool things you can do with printers, but yeah. So misconfigured AD is definitely a way to leverage, or what I see on a lot of engagements, or every engagement in this case. Unpatched systems and poor asset visibility. I'll tell you a quick story about poor asset visibility. Shadow IT, forgotten service. This is a true story. And I said this in I think a few of my talks on this. I had a Raspberry Pi. This was about four years ago. And I put in a client, and I had, I used to use little NUCs, like little HP NUCs for, access to internal engagements. But at this time, I had a little Raspberry Pi. I put it in the server room, put it in the stack. Raspberry Pis are really small. And I forgot what, this is crazy because I had so much stuff going on. I forgot what client that Raspberry Pi was at, right? To be honest, I just forgot about it. Now I have asset management. Now, if I want to deploy a NUC, I know what NUC is going where, because I'm a little more organized now. 4 years ago, I wasn't. But so then 2 years later, in 2024, this was in 2022, 2024, we went back and did an engagement. And, you do your Nmap, and I was like, oh, that host name looks familiar. And that back then it was called this InfoSec Pi or something like that. I named it. And there you go. They didn't, and for 2 years, this thing been sitting on the internet or sitting on their environment. They didn't even know. So they didn't do any asset visibility. And if, God forbid, that was something malicious, it would have been game over. They would have been owned, right? So shadow IT is really real. And I think a lot of engagements, they have poor visibility on their assets. But yeah, we can go to the next one. Sweet. All right, let me do. All right, so I'm going to try to speed it up a little bit so, we can make sure I cover everything. So weak passwords and credential hygiene. We have, these are going back to gap number 1, weak passwords. So discovered passwords like password 2026. And for a backup service account, I didn't put the actual service backup account. It was a Veeam, but for whatever, the username was different, but the password was summer 2025. And if you have a service account, what don't you do? Change your password because you break the service account. So this was an actual password on an engagement about a year ago in 2025. Jay Smith, obviously that's a phony baloney name, but that was the actual password, company123. And administrator, this was on another engagement. It was welcome one, bang. And I asked them why they had that. And that was when they set up a new user account, they put welcome one, bang, and then the user is supposed to change the password. At this point, the domain admin password, they never changed, which was really outrageous, but this is a true story. VPN user, there was a password like that. I think they watched a YouTube video saying, oh, change your password to password with a 0, and they did. And then database admins was like, QuickBooks and other, regular backup database accounts with vendor default creds. And yeah, how do these attackers exploit these? Password spraying, credential stuffing, brute forcing, online, offline, phishing, plus reuse, like I was saying prior. And it's pretty easy to fix this. This is the remediation I say, right? 14 plus characters, passphrases versus a password, right? Instead of saying, I don't know, New York Rangers, because I'm a big hockey guy, say the Rangers are the best team ever. And then put 1994 because that's when they won the cup. That's not my password. But unique credentials per system. And then privileged account audits. Make sure you audit those. And there's a whole bunch of tools out there today that can audit, admin and regular user accounts. Dark web credential monitoring. Make sure you do. And there's a lot of low cost tools out there in software and services that can do this. But yeah, go ahead and go to the next one. And the next one is missing MFA. I don't want to sound redundant, but stolen passwords equal full access, right? Because if you have no MFA, if I get your credentials, you get logged in, game over, right? I don't have to be prompted for any MFA. And these are on VPN, emails, cloud services, admin portals, RDP. I made a few videos on like real engagements that I've done, like that had RDP, had IIS servers exposed to the internet, that had anonymous logins. It's been fun out there the last couple of years doing these engagements. And so what do we recommend, or what should you do? Obviously, enforce, no matter if people push back, especially SMBs, depending on what kind of client you have some guy or some folks out there that are, how can I say this in professional terms? They're pushbackers, if you know what I mean. They'll push back and say, I don't need this. It's another pain in the butt to have MFA. So I have, if I lose my phone, if my phone's in another room, I just want to have a username and password. Fight that all day, because once they get hacked or once something, God forbid, happens, you are the blame. So enforce MFA everywhere, external facing systems, priority phishing, MFA, pretty much everywhere. Conditional access policies, monitor, and then monitor for MFA bypass attempts. That's another one, especially if you're a target. You can go ahead to the next one. And the next one is probably one of my favorites, right? Misconfigured AD. So technically, AD is like the crown jewels, right? And, the most common path to DA. This is what I want to go over. And this is, real world. Obviously, you can do your exams, you can do all your certifications, but sometimes, in my opinion, I'm going to say this live, certifications are harder than real engagements. So because on an exam, they're specifically misconfiguring or breaking something to make you think harder. In the real world, they're just configuring things to make it work, and they don't think about the security perspective. People don't think about that, right? When you go to do an exam, who are preparing these exams? Hackers, right? So they're going to make your life a little harder. When you go into a real environment, who's configuring those systems? Sysadmins, they don't think security. Remember that. So co-browsing requests a TGS for SPN. service principal name, enabled accounts, crack offline, no privileges needed, right? So I can never say this quick. As rep roasting, unconstrained delegation, ACL abuse using like Bloodhound. You can check all your, Google Maps of AD, pass the hash, pass the ticket, and DC sync attacks. You can go ahead and go to the next one. All right, let me just take a sip. Hearing the Boston accent. No, I'm not from Boston. No, don't get that twisted. I'll turn New York real quick, but to keep it professional. But sorry, my ADD got kicked in. So gap number 4, unpatched systems and, outdated servers. People think like I've seen, and I said this in, I think the Tampa, besides Tampa, I did an engagement for a financial firm, a small credit union, and their ATM systems were Windows XP embedded. And I don't know how they did their PCI DSS audit. It wasn't in a CDE environment. So it was just sometimes these small credit unions, this is another whole ball of wax of a conversation. You have to be careful who you bank with. That's why I kept my money under my bed. But you just have to be really careful and do your own due diligence on them. If you're going for small credit unions, a lot of people like them because they get better interest rates. They do, better deals than larger institutions. But just be careful because not only them, like a lot of people running outdated servers like Server 2008, 2012. I can't believe that's like old now. It's crazy. I remember when that just came out. End of life OSs, Windows XP, Windows 7, 2003 servers, vulnerable web frameworks, right? There's stale network firmwares, routers, switches, firewalls, APs, etc. Unmanaged IoT and OT devices on a flat network, your TVs, your thermostat, your microwave, especially at these fancy offices, they try to get all their high-tech stuff on the internet. I was able to compromise an IoT device through a refrigerator and pivot into a network, right? Because on a flat network, it's not segmented with VLANs. So I have a whole bunch of cool stories. So gap number 5 is poor asset visibility, shadow IT, like I said about that Raspberry Pi. Forgotten cloud VMs, storage buckets, which reside in the public internet, right? Old dev test servers still running in production. That's a big one and happens more often than you think. And then rogue access points. And this happens a ton, especially like I did a wireless engagement about a month ago, and someone was testing a new wireless network that they plugged into their desk. It was an on-site visit. And they just, were testing it just to see how things performed. Before they put it onto their wireless controller and put it into their mesh, into their topology. And they left it hanging out there, and it was a rogue device, and people were trying to connect to it, but it wasn't connecting to the internet, right? Because it was just like contained, and he was just testing some things. I don't know, but and yeah, so that was that, and they just left it there, and people complaining. And then when I went in there, I was able to do some fun stuff to clone and pivot and broadcast that network for folks to try to connect to. And unmanaged endpoints with EDR coverage. This is another big one, right? Maybe they had a computer that they ran CrowdStrike, MDE, whatever you want to call it, and now what they're doing is they re-image that machine for later use for a new user, but they have it still in their bench of machines that they re-image, but they're still connected to the internet or the network because they're plugged into a managed switch that connects to uplinks to the full network. And now it's an unmanaged, so it's a pivot. If someone gets onto that machine, it's easy to compromise it because there's no alerts that's alerting. So these are things that every day we see. Not every day, not that one, but you know what I mean. Yeah, we can go ahead and go to the next one. So how attackers move through your environment. So obviously, first things first, recon information gathering is numero uno all the time, right? OSINT, LinkedIn scraping, DNS subdomain enumeration, Shodan, credential leak searches, you can figure out where you want to go ahead and look for those leaks. Initial access, get that through phishing, password spraying, expose VPN, RDP sessions, and or any public-facing vulnerability. Persistence, Privesc, lateral movement, and then the impact. The impact is obviously data exfiltration, ransomware deployment, credential dumping, or business disruption. Go ahead and go to the next one, please. So why does penetration testing matter, right? So the question is not if your organization will be tested. It is whether you test it first or an attacker does. I like this phrase, and I use this a lot, and even on my, briefing calls or just like getting to know someone, because you will be a target. And people are like, oh, I'm too small. I have a funny story. I have a friend that's in South Florida. He inherited his parents' or his dad's company. And I always told him, not the dentist, this is a different story, but I always told him, dude, like you need to get a pen test. And they said, he's like, oh, I don't need that. I don't need that. I don't need it. You can see where I'm going. And I don't know why, because it's not like a great mate that I just talk to all the time. It was like one day, I don't know if it was just something that was inside of me. I just Googled that company, right? And it's a public, and crazy enough, they got ransomed. They got ransomed because they needed to be PCI DSS, and it was a flat network. But it was like, and I text him right away. I'm like, dude, what happened here? And he goes, oh, I should have listened. I never reached out to you because I was embarrassed. And it's like, it doesn't matter if you're this small or a giant in the sea, you're a target. Like if someone doesn't like you, someone knows a hacker. Trust me, someone knows someone that can do some damage. So just make sure you can get your stuff tested before the attackers do. It's a God honest truth. It is what it is. But so just find gaps before those attackers do. Test your defenses, validate security controls, and then meet compliance requirements. And in this case, I don't even know how. I think he was paying off the auditors because no way he was PCI DSS compliant. But and then reduce insurance premiums. Go ahead and go to the next one. So here we go. Excuse me. So these are some real world case studies that, that has really happened for me and my team. So go ahead and go to the first one, this initial pen test. Internal pen test, excuse me. I don't know why it's really tiny on my end. So this one was through an ADS exploit. Correct me if I'm wrong, folks, and this was a law firm with 85 employees, a Windows 80 environment. So I want to ask folks on here that are pen testers or previous, whatever, if you're working in this industry, like how often are you able to run your responder, get a hash, crack that, and get domain admin that way? I really want to hear, like maybe after the conference, or just hit me up. I'm really, really curious because I feel like ADCS is a big attack vector, and that's why I think a lot of the CTFs and train is pushing this way. And so ADCS is definitely a fun one. But yeah, the foothold was obviously anytime you're doing any kind of internal engagement. I think this was a non-assumed breach. If I remember this one, because we do a lot of pen tests, I would have to go back, and I did this one I think in February or March. So I'm old, so I forget. But I'm not that old. But standard domain user, phishing simulation. We did a phishing simulation for this client. We did ADCS enumeration, use your certify. And then we found a ESC1 template. And definitely under 40, right? No, I'm not under 40. I'm 40. But so ADCS, ESC1. Now, I can't even say that quick. And then we got a TGT to domain admin. And then we did DC sync plus getting all the hashes. Yes. Law firms are terrible. Yeah, they are. Yeah, I'll keep my comments to myself. But yeah, they can be a nuisance, to say the least. But yeah, what we did, we got initial access. Then we, ADCS enumeration, started enumerating, and then we were able to find this template. Then we're able to privask via PK init, and then we got full domain compromise. So that was a real case study that we were able to do for a client or on a client, and it was really, really interesting. Tea time. Yeah, tea time for fun. Yeah, I don't really drink coffee, so I'm like hooked on these green teas. It doesn't matter what time of the day it is. Like I have friends like, dude, you can drink that at 10 o'clock at night and go to sleep. I'm like, yeah, my body's like addicted to that stuff. But yeah, go ahead and go to the next one. Tea time. That's a good one. I like that. Tea time. I should get a shirt that says tea time. But a wireless, because wireless is probably, if it's not internal AD stuff, wireless is probably one of my favorite kinds of hacking and pen testing and all that stuff. So here we did, and this was for a restaurant. And this was like a one-off because the funny thing is on this one, it was an interesting, I was back in my old town or my old neighborhood in South Florida, because I'm not living in South Florida anymore. I went to go eat and I had a hacker shirt on. I don't know which shirt I had. I had one of my nerd shirts. And the owner came up to me and said, hey, like, do you hack? And I'm like, oh man, is this like are you like part of the feds? And I was like, yeah, I have a penetration testing. I like to try to segue into pen testing because if you don't know, so I don't want to frighten people. I'm like, yeah, like we do some security assessment, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, we want to get our network tested and our wireless specifically because our POS system is connected to our wireless network. And there was only like one hardwired device in there, which was a switch that goes to the POS system, but everything else was wireless. But anyhow, we tested their wireless. We obviously you start out with your recon, you run your Airmon NG and do all that stuff, or Wi-Fi or whatever you're using. For this one, it was a really small engagement, so I didn't use no Wi-Fi Pineapple. I didn't do any fancy stuff. And then WPA2 pre-shared key SSID via Arrow Dump NG. And then we, get your 4-way handshake, get that captioned in about 3 minutes. And the reason, because there was a lot of activity and we did some deauthentication. And then we were able to crack the password in about 22 minutes. I would say 20, 25 minutes, but I put it in the middle, 22. And then we were able to pivot because it was on the same network as the POS system on a 24-bit subnet, which that's normally the default if you're running, like I said, 254 hosts or less. And then we're able to access some data on the POS system and the cardholder data. So, and this is something I just remembered. Remember, maybe I shouldn't say that because, hackers can probably put two and two together, but it was really, really interesting stuff. So what we did was do some wireless recon, credential capture, network pivot, and then the impact demonstration, how we were able to enumerate the POS terminals. And it was running it was, like I said, it was running outdated Windows embedded with no EDR. And then we're able to access some shares, which they had how they did their share was really ghetto, I think. They had like a laptop, Toshiba. There was an old Toshiba laptop that they had like a little like Western Digital hard drive. And then I guess there was like one of the guys in there that thought they knew computers, and then just shared out the drive. And then they pointed the logs to a UNC path that it was like, and it was all open. Like you do whack, and then everyone can get there. You don't get prompt for like your credentials to authenticate, which again, no bueno. But yeah, you can go ahead and go to the next one. I want to try to wrap it up quick now because I can talk for ages. And the physical pen test, OSINT recon, tailgating, implant, C2 callback, and then full access. And if yeah, you can go on to the next one. I know we have like what, 2 minutes? Is that the countdown? So, yep. So like the good news, obviously everything is preventable, right? Here is what I would recommend. If anyone here, if you want to ask your family, tell your friends, your coworkers, whatever, no matter what, MFA everywhere, strong password policy for your organization, patch management, network segmentation, no matter what, right? So if you're running a small organization, put everything in different subnets, and security monitoring, EDR on all your endpoints, centralize your login, and you should be good. All right, we can go to the next one. And then some quick wins today. If you apply these on this beautiful Saturday morning, you'll be good. Tell your families and friends. Like enable MFA, patch your systems, run your backups, even at your house, right? Like this is not only about security. It's like if you're running a computer in your house, a laptop, make sure you have maybe a small little NAS or something that you can offload your computer backup, or you can obviously back up to the cloud. I don't really do that. I have 3 NASs in my house that I have my own little private cloud. But and then train your employees, train your people, because I think that's the number one exploit for folks. And at the end, get a pen test to verify, make sure all this stuff is done. You can go to the next one. All right. So a little bit about ISP security. What we do. I just want to throw this out there. Those folks that maybe never heard of me or never heard of ISP security, we're located in Central Florida. We're in Orlando. We do all types of pen testing, network pen testing, red team operations, web app, cloud, mobile, wireless, AD, purple team. And now we also do like some blue team stuff, SOC as a service and MDR and stuff like that, and vCISO and security advisory and stuff like that. So if there's anyone that's interested in that, please reach out and I'll be more than happy to discuss that further. You can go to the next one. And yeah, the pen test services, this is pretty much all we, you can go to the next one, our services. I don't want to bore everyone. This is all like the vCISO services and security advisory. And go to the next one. Managed SOC services. These are all the additional stuff that we offer. You can go ahead and go to the next one. And final takeaways. SMBs are the number one target, no matter what anyone says. Attackers know you have less security. So if you're an SMB, if you work for an SMB, or if you have family that works at SMB, let them know. Please educate them. This is what this is all about. They can get exploited just like a big guy, and they're easier to exploit, and they get exploited every day. The gaps are basic: weak passwords, no MFA, misconfigured AD, unpatched systems. The attack chain is predictable: recon, initial access, prevent, blah, blah, blah. Prevention, just do some patching, do some MFA, segmentation, monitor your stuff, and you should be good. And then test before the attackers do. This whole thing is get your network, get your infrastructure, get your web app, whatever you have tested. And then penetration testing finds the gaps in your defenses before, it can become a real incident. So you can go to the next one. I think that's it. Is that it? Yep, that's it. So I want to say thank you, for everyone that listened. If you have any questions, you know where to find me. You can hit me up after the conference or, on LinkedIn or whatever. And thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Cheers, guys.
No, that was awesome, Pat. So huge thank you for coming on. And we actually have a few more minutes left, so I'm going to hit you with a few questions I saw in the chat. First question I saw from Rihanna was, will Pat buy Rihanna coffee at DEF CON?
Oh, yeah. I can buy you a coffee. I'll drink green tea, but I'll buy you a coffee.
There we go. And then let's see. Another question I saw was, do you make or use your own C2 during your pen testing?
So I have my own. Like a friend of mine developed it, but then I also use like Mythic and open source stuff as well. It all depends on the budget that they have. And, Cobalt Strike, I have a copy of Cobalt Strike. Mythic, I use Mythic. I've used Sliver. And then I have one that a friend of mine developed for us internally. I'll use that at times if the time permits. But yeah.
No, fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I know some folks. Yeah, it's depending on the type of pen test you're doing. There may or may not really be a C2 that gets stood up. It more might just be like doing configurations or seeing what data you can take, and then it's just going to that organization's kind of call it like almost like a Dropbox in a sense. So call that in a
Exactly.
sense T2 as well. So no, that's awesome. I swear there's one more question in here.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, sorry for the tea time. Yeah, so every time I go, I'm gonna take a drink. I was like, oh, tea time. So
Yeah.
I was just being funny with it. But
No,
you
dude,
should
that's
totally make
awesome.
a shirt that says like Security Pat, it's tea time, and then like I think that'd be actually pretty cool.
And it's funny because
So
Rihanna said that when we did one of our podcasts together, she's like spilling the tea or something like that. So like, because she knows I drink tea, so she's
uh,
awesome.
oh, what was another one? I guess I have one more question for you too. Oh, one was another question before I ask you mine was, have you ever thought about building an OSINT dashboard, or do you guys have specific OSINT tools that maybe you have a favorite one to use?
So to answer your first question, no, we don't have really an OSINT dashboard. I just do it, I guess, quote unquote, old school. Like I have all my tools that I'll use, and I'll just start scraping stuff. And especially with the big AI these days,
Yeah.
I have created stuff with Claude that helps out with some of the process. So, your traditional, you can use hunter.io, get their email, see if there exists, use, the mayor's tool for like Office 365 and user enumeration, see if they, what's out there for that. But it all depends because I think a lot of people get, especially clients, like, oh, I want an external network pen test. And then they expect me to go bananas. I'm like, okay, uh, external network pen test is giving me a group of IPs and this is the scope, So that's why I like to educate folks on that. And correct me if I'm wrong, if you or anyone here, like an OSINT investigation or OSINT pen test, or we want to call it, I think is different than an external network pen test.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
I,
for sure.
yeah. So, yeah, that's a topic for another day, but or an argument or whatever you want to debate. But yeah, any other questions?
Yeah, there's a few more. So, I mean, one, super excited. So it sounds like are you attending both Black Hat and DEF CON this year? And if
Yes,
so,
sir.
where can we find you there? Any specific rooms?
So, yeah, I'm going to be actually participating and volunteering at the Red Team Village. I forget what day I am. I think I just got the schedule like this week, but I haven't really. I checked, but I forgot. I think it's on Thursday, but
Cool.
I can always make that announcement on LinkedIn, or just hit me up if you guys are there, and I'm more than happy to like meet up with you, shake a hand, have a chat, and I'm pretty noticeable when I'm walking around. So just don't be scared to say hello. Like I'm just another human being, just like Andrew. It's like anyone else. I'm not better or worse. So
And then obviously with our huge support here for next gen, when you have folks that come up to you, maybe specifically in the pen testing world, what's one piece of advice that you'd give somebody trying to break into pen testing specifically?
ooh, so that's a lovely question. So every I say 5 years it changes, right? So back in my days, so what I would say for folks today in 2026, before you get into pen testing, I think setting up your, just going back to like the UNC paths and doing all these basic network VMware stuff or VM stuff, setting up Active Directory, setting up your environments, or setting up your own IS servers or Apache servers or Linux servers, and understanding where this technology resides and what services and applications reside on top. Because
Mm-hmm.
I've seen people try to, swim laps before they can crawl, and I feel like there's that gap. And it's true. Like I've interviewed pen testers and I'm like, okay, what is FSMA rows? And that's basic stuff in AD, or like if I'm doing a NetDOM query, what am I actually looking for when I'm seeing like a GC or a read-only domain controller, or, all these little things that, I think that like are skipped when you're learning pen testing. And a lot of these courses, like they focus on the engagement itself versus like the preliminary stuff that are needed. So set up your own stuff, like set up your own lab at home. I wouldn't say hack the box, try hack me, those things, because all you're doing there is downloading a VPN file, and then what? What is
Yeah.
Diffie-Hellman? When you're
I,
connecting to
I
the VPN, what are you actually doing?
I think it's you hit it heavily. It's just like there's such kind of like those small fundamentals that sometimes people think that, oh, these are just quick skipping stones. Like a really strong foundation, no matter what path you go down, is really going to put you, I think, ahead of the curve. Because just like you said, like and many engagements, sometimes you're not finding that 0 day or that one line of 5,000 pieces of code. You're finding something that's maybe super minuscule. That's like, oh man, like their website's configured incorrectly. With I can do a simple SQL injection and get into this. Like, and it's not going to take anyone that has like the OSCP or anything drastic or crazy, but those different skills are going to help you out. But yeah, having a strong foundation and having those kind of building blocks that you kind of just like riding a bike. They say, oh, you never forget. You always got to keep trying. Yeah, hit those skills when it comes into kind of bettering yourself. So no, I think that was awesome, Pat. And yeah, we're so excited to see you. We're so glad that you were here to hop on. I'm gonna make sure I see you as well to get you a Ginger Hacker Initiative sticker as well.
Love it.
And
Love it.
no, man. Last question before I kick you loose is Pat attending B-Sides Vegas this year or again?
No, so I'm not, because I'm going there with a friend that's not in cyber, that he's going to hang out with me on Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And so, yeah, I won't be at Vegas. I'll be at just Black Hat and DEF CON, because then he flies home Tuesday or Wednesday morning. So, like, we're going to do like normal touristy stuff first couple days. So, no, I will not be at B-Side Vegas.
All good. And no, I totally get that. Yeah, we're at Black Hat and DEF CON this year, so it's super exciting. But I mean, being in Arizona, it's like the Vegas trip. Like you can do Vegas in 3 days. Anything after 3 days, you start to miss your bed. So it's just like,
Yep. No, 1,000%. So, yeah. Like I said, if there's any questions after this, that anything that I talked about, please hit me up anywhere that you can find me. I'm more than happy to answer as many questions as I can.
I have time for one more question and one more pop in the chat. What is your opinion on VulnHub over TryHackMe and Hack the Box?
Ooh, that's lovely. So, all right. So VulnLab, for those folks that don't know what VulnLab is it VulnHub or VulnLab?
Now, the questions, I think VulnHub, I think it's VulnLab.
VulnHub. VulnHub is the one that you just, like the old OSCP, like the playground that used to connect to those machines that you download from there. So that's a lovely question. I think even getting VulnHub machines, so you have to configure those. So that's good, right? When you download them, sometimes they're host only, sometimes they're configured as NAT, sometimes they're bridged. So it's like, now if something doesn't work, you can't ping it. Now it's like, okay, am I on the same network? Is my attack machine on the same network as my VM? So that gives you a little outside of that box thinking of configuring it. So that's definitely good. What is my opinion on it I think starting out with that would be awesome. Because, I always say, go start out with Metasploitable 2. And that's the same kind of concept, right? Downloading a VM and installing it in your VirtualBox or VMware. Excuse me. And then I would say, like, depending on where you are in your career, like I'm assuming if you're asking this, maybe you're in your earliest stages. TryHackMe is good, but me personally, this is my own personal opinion, Hack the Box is a lot better. And I say that now because if you asked me that 3 years ago, I'd be like, oh, you have to start with TryHackMe because Hack the Box is it's a little more crazy. But now the fact that Hack the Box caught up with the times, like, oh, I need to get people started out here, and here before they get into the craziness. So I think going from VulnLab and going into Hack the Box would be a great